The workhouse Southwell was built in 1824, and over its existence it has housed many of the poorest in society, giving them food and shelter in return for work. Thousands of visitors each year flock to the workhouse, and it's almost as if past inmates have never left, and you can't help but feel a haunting presence of the past. The workhouse Southwell was the prototype of the 19th century workhouse, and was cited by the Royal Commission on the Poor Law as the best example among the existing workhouses. The success of the Southwell workhouse led to the new Poor Law of 1834, and led to the construction of workhouses across the country. It was designed by William Adams Nicholson, an architect from Southwell and Lincoln, together with the pioneer of the workhouse, Reverend John T. Beecher. Inmates were cruelly labelled as being lazy for simply being poor. The aim of the workhouse was to make life inside purposefully harsh, so that only the desperate would seek a placement within its walls. Also, so that inmates leaving would not want to come back. All but the disabled and elderly were expected to work, and daily tasks of hard labour included breaking stones and the recycling of oakum. Though the workhouse would see change over time, the building remained in use until the early 1990s, when it was used to provide temporary accommodation for mothers and children. Visitors who walk the corridors today report the sensation of being watched and of hearing footsteps following them as they explore. Many dark shadows have been seen lurking in the corner of multiple rooms, along with the sightings of orbs of light which disappear through walls. One ghost to have been seen is believed to be that of the Reverend John T. Beecher, the creator of the workhouse. His spirit has been seen in many locations around the workhouse, and is sometimes described as wearing ceremonial robes. Both visitors and volunteers have reported his spirit at times has shouted out, "Back you go." Another apparition commonly seen is that of a grey lady which floats around the women's dormitory. Visitors have reported seeing this grey lady watching them from the corner, only for her to then disappear. Upon entering the workhouse, families were split up and housed in separate wings. The ghosts of a man and woman are seen separately walking the corridors as if seeking for each other, but some have reported seeing the same couple together walking the grounds, but only on a Sunday. It may seem odd that they are only seen together on a Sunday, but a Sunday afternoon was the only time families were allowed to spend their time together. The mortuary is a hotbed of activity, with many orbs of light being sighted. It is in this room that people are filled with a sudden sense of terror, and report of a cold spot in the centre of the room. In the corner was a small holding cell, where inmates who broke the rules would be locked up for the night. Inmates were said to have been driven mad by this cramped darkness, and often believed to have heard the dead walking outside the cell at night. The ghostly laughter of children is heard in the yard outside, and a few have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a young girl lying silently face down on the ground. Other reports of ghostly children come from the children's dormitory, where they are heard crying. The sudden appearance of a young boy standing in the doorway startles visitors, and many claim to have had their clothes tugged in a playful manner. Volunteers often hear bangs caused by doors closing on their own as they close up for the day, and a sinister black shadow is often seen in the doorway of the infirm men's dormitory. Another widely reported phenomenon is the smell of tobacco, which is mostly reported coming from the day room of the infirm men. Every workhouse had a designated area for the use of an infirmary. These were within the existing workhouse and were often lacking in sanitation and unfit for purpose. The inspector of Southwell Workhouse in 1867 and again in 1868 found major defects in the way Southwell Workhouse Board of Guardians treated the sick, and he recorded, "The sick wards are in the body of the house and are now supplied with earth night stalls, but no soil is placed in them. There are no bathrooms nor lavatories. There is no paid nurse." The Furbeck Infirmary was built in 1871 and was erected outside the main workhouse compound, with segregated entrances and well-aired wards typical of its time. The infirmary care duplicated the type of care that you might expect to receive at home if ill, providing a long stay until inmates chose to leave or died. The Lancet and Florence Nightingale argued for separate infirmary provisions and for workhouses to employ nurses rather than using pauper inmates. Visitors today report hearing the light footsteps and laughter of children in this area. It may seem odd to hear children in this area, but in 1899 it was decided that children should not be accommodated in the main workhouse building, and the infirmary building was considered an acceptable alternative for babies and children. A rare ghost scene is that of an old man with a bloodied bandage around his head, sitting on one of the beds. He is said to talk in a low voice to himself, believed to be saying, "She hit me." Skeptics outrightly dismiss any notion of the workhouse Southwell being haunted, pointing to the fact that thousands that visit the site experience nothing. But many of those which have had sightings are credible witnesses, with no reason to make up tales of the paranormal. But as with all cases of the supernatural, whether or not the workhouse Southwell is haunted or not comes down to one question: do you believe?